I want to ask you a question. If someone asked you right now, do you have enough to retire? Could you answer that with confidence? Most people can't. And it's not because they haven't saved enough or haven't worked hard enough or haven't thought about it enough. It's because nobody has ever sat down with them and showed them how to actually calculate their number. Instead, they've heard things like you need $1 million or save 10 times your salary, aim for 2 million. And those numbers are either terrifying or reassuring depending on where you are, but they're almost never actually relevant to your specific situation. So today, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to walk you through exactly how I would calculate your real retirement number, the one that actually accounts for your spending, your Social Security, your timeline, and your life, not someone else's. Let's start by getting one thing out of the way. The idea that there's one universal retirement number, 1 million, 2 million, whatever you've heard, is not how this works. That money means something completely different depending on who you are. $1 million to someone living in rural Tennessee with no debt is much different than $1 million to someone living in, say, suburban Philadelphia with a $4,000 a month mortgage. They're completely different situations. Same number, but different outcomes. So, the first thing I want to do is I want you to let go of whatever number you've been carrying around in your head, whether it scared you or reassured you, and let's build your actual number from the ground up. The way to think about retirement savings is it's not a lump sum, it's an income replacement problem. The question is, how much money do I need in the bank? The question is, how much income do I need every month? And where is that going to come from? Answer that question, and the portfolio number takes care of itself. Here's the framework I use with every pre retirement client I work with. It has 3 steps. Step number 1, figure out what you actually spend. Not what you earn, but what you spend. These numbers are very different for most people, especially in their peak earning years. Go through your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements and add up your actual monthly outflows. Mortgage or rent, utilities, groceries, dining, travel, insurance, subscriptions, everything. Get a real number. Now adjust it for retirement. Some expenses go down. You're not commuting, you're not saving for retirement anymore. The kids may be off payroll, and some expenses go up. Healthcare before Medicare, travel if that's part of your retirement, or hobbies that you now have time for. For most of my clients with $500,000 or more in investable assets, I find that their retirement spending lands between 80 and 90, 80 and 100% of what they spend. So the 70% rule that you see online is not true. Most people just maintain their lifestyle when they get into retirement. Let's use a real example. Let's say you have $8,000 a month. That's $96,000 a year. That's your income number. Step number 2, now account for guaranteed income. The next step is to identify the income that will come in automatically, regardless of what the stock market does. The 2 most common sources are Social Security and pensions. You can log into SSA.gov and pull up your Social Security estimate. It'll show you your projected monthly benefit at 62, for retirement age, and at 70. We'll come back to the timing question in a different video, but for now, just get your number. Let's say you and your spouse will collect a combined $3,000 a month from Social Security at your full retirement age. That's $36,000 a year of guaranteed income. Subtract that number from your income target. So $96,000 minus $36,000 leaves a $60,000 gap. That gap, $60,000 a year, is now your portfolio's job. Step number 3, work backwards to get to your portfolio target. Now we use what's called the 4% rule, which I'll explain more in the next section, to translate that actual income number into a portfolio target. The simple version, divide your annual income gap by 0.04. So $60,000 divided by 0.04 equals $1.5 million. That's your number, $1.5 million in investable assets to sustainably generate $60,000 a year in retirement income. On top of your $36,000 a year in Social Security, gets you to your $96,000 spending target. Not 1 million, not 2 million, $1.5 million for this specific scenario. Your number will be different, but now you have an idea of how to find it. Let me take a minute to explain where that 4% figure comes from, because it's worth understanding. The 4% rule comes from research done in the 1990s by a financial planner named William Benjamin. He looked at historical market data going back decades and asked, what is the maximum percentage a retiree could withdraw from a diversified portfolio, adjusting for inflation, without running out of money over a 30-year period? The answer, across virtually every historical period he studied, was 4%. Even through the Great Depression, the 1970s, the dot-com crash, a 4% initial withdrawal rate, adjusted for inflation each year, held up over a 30-year period in almost every scenario. So if you have a $1 million portfolio, 4% of that is $40,000 in year 1. You adjust for inflation there. This shows that it's a sustainable portfolio withdrawal rate over a 30-year period. Now, let's talk about the variables that can move your numbers significantly in either direction. Because the framework I just walked through is a starting point, and real retirement planning accounts for a lot more than that. The first is retirement age. This is probably the biggest variable. Retiring at 60 versus 67 is not just a 7-year difference in when you stop working. It's 7 fewer years of contributions going to your portfolio. It's 7 more years of withdrawals coming out. It's potentially more years before Medicare kicks in, meaning you're covering health insurance out of pocket. And it's 7 years of a reduced Social Security claim if you take it at 62. Retiring at 60 with the same lifestyle target as retiring at 67 might require a portfolio that's 40 to 50% larger. So if an early retirement is your goal, you need to assume that. The next is healthcare before Medicaid. If you're retired before 65, you're on your own for health insurance. A couple in their early 60s could easily spend between $1,500 and $2,500 a month. That's $18,000 to $30,000 a year that needs to come from somewhere. A lot of pre-retirees dramatically underestimate this number. It's one of the most common planning gaps that I see. The next variable is called sequence of returns risk. Here's one that doesn't get enough attention. The order in which your investment returns occur matter enormously in retirement, much more than it does during accumulation. If the market drops, say, 30% in your first 3 years of retirement while you're withdrawing from the portfolio, you're selling shares at a depressed value to cover living expenses. Those shares are gone and they can't recover when the market comes back. A bad sequence early on can permanently impair your retirement portfolio, even if the long-term average is fine. This is why the years right before and after retirement are the most financially vulnerable of your life, and why a plan that simply says, I'll earn 7% a year is nonsense. The next is longevity. How long do you plan to live? The 4% rule assumes a 30-year retirement. If you retire at 65, they get you to 95. But if you retire at 60, you might need to plan to 100. And that makes a big difference in the number you need. A longer planning horizon means either a lower safe withdrawal rate, a larger portfolio, or both. Finally, inflation, especially healthcare inflation. General inflation erodes purchasing power over time, which the 4% rule does account for. But healthcare inflation historically runs about 2 to 3 percentage points above general inflation. So good retirement planning builds in a healthcare cost escalator that's higher than the general inflation assumption. Let me tell you how this actually plays out in practice. When a new client comes to me, usually somewhere in their late 50s, maybe a few years away from retirement, they have anywhere between $500,000 and $2 million saved. The first thing they almost always want to say in some version is, I just want to know if I'm going to be okay. Not tell me about asset allocation, what are your returns, explain sequence of returns risk to me. Just, am I going to be okay? The honest answer is that most of them are closer than they think. Not all of them, but most. I worked with a couple a few years ago, both in their early 60s, planning to retire within 2 years. He was working full time, she had worked part time for most of their life. And together they had about $780,000 saved across 401ks and IRAs. They've been told by a friend that needed at least $2 million and were convinced they couldn't retire on their schedule. So we sat down and went through the framework. Their actual monthly spending was $7,200, not $10,000 as they assumed. Their mortgage would be paid off in 14 months, and their combined Social Security was $4,100 a month, which means their income gap was $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year from a $780,000 portfolio is a 3.8% withdrawal rate. That's sustainable. That can be retired on schedule and even a few months earlier if need, without anxiety. The $2 million number they'd been carrying around had nothing to do with their life. Their number was $780,000 and they already had it. The $2 million number that they've been carrying around had nothing to do with their life. Their number was $780,000 and they already had it. Now, not every story ends this way. I've also had conversations where the numbers showed someone needed more work, right? They needed to work an additional 2 to 3 years or make adjustments to their spending plan. Those conversations are harder, but they're far better to have at 62 than at 68 when the options are narrow. That's what I do at Bluebell Wealth Management. If you're within 10 years of retirement and you've never sat down and actually calculated your number, that's the most valuable hour you can spend on your financial future. The link to schedule conversation is in the description. Now, let me give you 3 things that I want you to take away from this video. First, forget the generic numbers that you've heard. $1 million, $2 million, those numbers mean nothing without context. Your number depends on your spending, your Social Security, your timeline, and your life. Second, the framework is simple. Figure out what you spend, subtract your guaranteed income, divide the gap by 4%. That's your starting point. It's not perfect, no projection is, but it's real and it's yours. Third, the variables matter. Retirement age, healthcare, longevity, sequence of returns, these can move your numbers significantly. A good plan accounts for all of them. So here's your homework for this week. Go pull up your Social Security estimate. Spend 30 minutes going through 3 months of bank statements to get your real monthly spending number. Just those two things, with those two numbers in hand, you can run the framework that I walked you through today and get your first real retirement number. If this video was helpful, please subscribe. I put out weekly videos, especially for people who are getting serious about retirement, practical, honest guidance without jargon.